welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington, where we're following breaking news in the war between Israel and Hamas, amid new signs that Israel is preparing for an imminent ground invasion of Gaza and fears growing of another front of this war opening on the Israeli-Lebanese border. Right now, the Israeli military says a, quote, extensive attack is underway targeting the Hamas terrorist organization inside Gaza. And this afternoon, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a surprise address saying, quote, we have no choice but to fight, and the attacks on Hamas were, quote, only the beginning.
I met today with the U.S. Secretary of State, and we are guaranteeing the continuation of the war with more artillery, more ammunitions coming to Israel. We're going to eradicate Hamas, and we're going to bring victory.
It comes after the Israeli military ordered the entire population of northern Gaza to evacuate south, a warning the United Nations is calling impossible. This is footage shot inside Gaza today, and it shows leaflets falling from the sky. Those orders apply to more than 1 million people in the densely populated Gaza Strip, including key population centers like Gaza City. The UN is pleading with Israel to rescind the order, warning of devastating humanitarian consequences. Hamas, meanwhile, is telling Gazans to ignore the warnings and stay put. But some residents have already begun to flee, heading south by car and even by foot. And with borders on all sides closed, it's unclear where those evacuating can go. NBC News has now confirmed an airstrike hit a convoy of evacuees, killing 70. NBC News also spoke with a Palestinian surgeon working in Gaza who described the harrowing conditions.
We are running out of electricity, running out of water, and whole neighborhoods have been wiped out from the map, and the whole families have been wiped out from the history. No one can leave Gaza. No one can enter Gaza. There is no crossing borders, nothing left for anyone to do. It's a huge, big cage that we are trapped inside, and someone from outside is just keep on bombing, non-stop bombing, and there is nowhere else to go.
Just a horrifying account there. Well, already more than 400,000 Gazans have been displaced. That's according to the UN, as Israeli strikes have leveled entire neighborhoods. This is new footage from inside Gaza shot by our NBC team showing the devastation on the ground. Speaking from Qatar today, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken acknowledging the growing humanitarian crisis and once again urging Israel to do everything it can to avoid civilian casualties.
Let's not lose sight of why this is happening. Israel is conducting operations in Gaza because Hamas carried out terrorist attacks that killed, in the most horrific ways, 1,300 of its people. Hamas terrorists slaughtered, raped, mutilated, tortured, burned innocent civilians, from babies to the elderly, men, women, boys, and girls. Now, efforts to get humanitarian aid into Gaza are complicated by the fact that Hamas continues to use innocent civilians as human shields and is reportedly blocking roads to prevent Palestinians from moving to southern Gaza out of harm's way. We know the humanitarian situation is urgent. We're actively engaged with partners, including Qatar, to get aid to those who need it.
As Israel continues to amass its military along the border in preparation for a ground invasion, it continues to strike targets in Gaza. Richard Engel's team on the ground shot this video of an Israeli tank firing into the enclave earlier today. And now it appears Israeli forces have begun to enter Gaza, with the IDF saying it's conducting localized raids inside the Gaza Strip in an effort to locate hostages. At least 120 hostages remain in Gaza following this weekend's attack by Hamas. The death toll in the conflict has risen, with at least 1,300 killed in Israel and 1,800 in Gaza. 27 Americans are among the dead. Joining me now in northern Israel by the Lebanon border is NBC News foreign correspondent Josh Letterman. Courtney Cubie joins us with what a ground invasion might look like. And Kelly O'Donnell has the very latest from the White House. Thanks to all of you for starting us off on another incredibly somber day. Josh, I want to start with you in the region. What more do we know about those localized raids? What can you tell us?
Well, this was a big development, Kristen, because while the Israeli military has conducted hundreds of airstrikes in the Gaza Strip since the terrorist attacks on Saturday, as far as we know, this was the first time they've actually gone on the ground, on foot into the Gaza Strip. And the military says that in these localized raids, they were not only trying to go after Hamas terrorists and weapons in the Gaza Strip, but also to search for and locate evidence that will help the Israeli military to free those hostages that are now in the Gaza Strip. As far as we know, they were not able to obtain and free any hostages during this particular set of raids, but this does seem to signal that we are moving closer and closer to the more large-scale ground incursion that has really been signposted by the Israeli military for days now, with the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, making a very rare Sabbath evening national address tonight, where he really girded Israel for the long fight that is coming, telling the public here that they need to stand united, that this is going to be hard, it's not going to be fast, but that Israel knows what it needs to do to win, and he says it will. Kristen?
Yeah, just a really stark message there by Prime Minister Netanyahu. You're absolutely right. Josh, let's just go back to the hostages for a moment. I mean, can you contextualize just how much of a concern is there for the hostages, given not just the impending ground invasion, but obviously the firing that we're seeing back and forth?
I got to tell you, Kristen, this is on the mind of every Israeli right now. There's just not a good solution to this. I spoke for quite a while yesterday with the relatives of hostages, many of them Americans, that are in the Gaza Strip right now. And I asked them, look, what do you want the government to do? Should they hold off on going in on this incursion to root out this terrorist threat, given the fact that there are hostages that could very well be in harm's way if the military goes in with an incursion that is likely to result in a large number of civilian casualties? The Israeli military, they say they're doing everything they can, not only to minimize those civilian casualties, but in the process to try to locate and extract those hostages. We heard efforts from the United States, including from Blinken, to try to secure some type of an exchange, to work with other countries. But right now, there is not a good solution for how Israel can both go into Gaza for what it feels is an operation it needs to do to restore its own national security, and also try to minimize the prospect that some of those hostages that are now in the Gaza Strip could fall victim to that incursion as well.
And Josh, of course, you're in the northern part of the country, and the IDF is saying that it's striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. And we've been talking about this throughout the week, the concern about this war expanding to multiple fronts, potentially Syria as well. What is the risk factor there?
It's very high. And while we've seen some sporadic exchanges of gunfire over the last several days between Hezbollah and the Israeli military, they have been fairly limited, minor in comparison to what we're seeing with airstrikes in the Gaza Strip. But over the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 hours, it seems like that's really picked up. And we've heard from Hezbollah's leaders today saying they're not going to sit this one out, particularly as they see Israel on the verge of a likely ground incursion. Hezbollah now threatening to get directly involved as well. And that has communities like Nahariya, where I am at, just about 7 miles south of the Lebanese border, on very high alert right now. They have seen Hezbollah rockets fall and cause casualties and deaths here before, and they are bracing for a conflict that could potentially spiral beyond the Gaza Strip to include this border, to include the West Bank, to include Israel's border with Syria. And that is exactly what Israel and many of its allies are trying to contain tonight.
One of the many concerns in Israel and all across the world. Josh Letterman, thank you for your fantastic reporting. Please continue to stay safe. Courtney Kube, let me turn to you at the Pentagon, and let's pick up on where I left off with Josh and these localized raids. What are your sources at the Pentagon telling you about that and this potential ground attack?
I mean, everyone is just waiting for when this ground attack starts, and there's a lot of different opinions on when it could actually begin, but the common word that we keep hearing is that it's imminent. So what we'll often see in a military operation is before something starts, before a major ground offensive, before a major air attack, there's often what the U.S. military calls shaping operations, and that can take a number of different forms. One is airstrikes or artillery strikes going into a place, and it's literally shaping the battlefield for the larger operation that's to come. That could be what we are seeing here with these smaller units going in. They could be trying to go in, gather intelligence, figure out where strikes need to, or where the large assault needs to go, and get a better sense. Remember, this is Gaza that we're talking about here that they're going into. It is been closed off. It is walled off. It is extremely difficult urban terrain and urban warfare. It's literally, what I keep comparing it to, and many of our viewers are probably familiar with, was the fight for West Mosul in Iraq. And why I say that is because it was very congested. ISIS at the time was very dug in. They had booby-trapped buildings. They had snipers high up in these high-rise buildings, and it was extremely difficult urban warfare. And because of it, it's literally block to block. It's extremely difficult and time-consuming combat, and it's something that needs to be very well planned out. Now, I will say also, you know this well, Kristen, the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, they are extremely well trained, they are extremely well equipped, and this is the sort of thing that they train for in their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to imagine the level of fear in that region right now. And Court, following up on that point, I mean, there's a concern about getting citizens out of the Gaza Strip, which the UN is saying is not realistic. But there's also this question about Hamas leaders. They try to blend in with citizens. Is there a sense that they're doing that and that they've potentially already fled by now?
So there's an assumption that they are not only trying to blend in with the population, frankly, as they have and as they do in Gaza, but also there's a real concern about Hamas using civilians as human shields. That's been a tactic that they've used in the past. There's an assumption that that will also happen in this ground offensive or ground invasion whenever it actually really begins. But you bring up an excellent point, Kristen, and that is the extensive tunnel systems. We've heard over the years hundreds of kilometers of tunnel systems exist under Gaza. We don't really have a good sense of exactly how big they are right now, and also how they may have been impacted already by the ongoing airstrikes that we've seen Israel take over the past several days. But the question that we have been asking now for some time, and we don't really have a good answer to, frankly, is Hamas still actively using those tunnel systems right now to hold the hostages, to move people around, to move equipment around? Are they able to continue to resupply themselves? Remember, the one big use of those tunnel systems historically has been to move weapons and equipment and fighters into Gaza. We just don't have a good sense of that. But the reality is Israel has been well aware of those tunnels for some time and presumably has pretty good intelligence on them already, Kristen.
Yeah, Kelly O'Donnell, obviously they're watching all of this very closely at the White House, and we know that President Biden just spoke to the family members of those 14 Americans who are still unaccounted for. Kelly, what's the latest there in that regard?
Well, the president has been trying to do two things: keep very engaged on the issues related to Israel, and at the same time keep a public schedule that is dealing with his own administration's economic message, Bidenomics, as he calls it. He's just been in Philadelphia, and he was asked by the pool group of reporters traveling with him what the greatest concern he has about the ground incursion, invasion that may be coming, and his answer was one word: death. The president, of course, was confronting the emotions and the reality for more than a dozen American families that have missing members of their families. We've been told that that call with those families happened before the president left for his day of activities in the Philadelphia area. And each family had a couple of members of the family represented, and the president talked about wanting to make certain that in his description about why he wanted to do this call, to be certain that these American families understood that their president was concerned, aware, and wanting to be connected to them at such a difficult time when there are huge questions about the fate of their loved ones. The president also, at his event today in Philadelphia, which was again about his economic agenda, he addressed what's happening in Israel, and here's part of what he had to say.
My direction, our teams are working in the region, including communicating directly with the governments of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab nations, and the United Nations to surge support and humanitarian consequences for Hamas attack to help Israel. You know, we can't lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas and Hamas's appalling attacks, and they're suffering as a result as well.
So the administration is trying to make the point that there is a need for humanitarian help. There is a need for safe passage. There are many innocent people who face a very treacherous, frightening situation that could be deadly. And so there is a message that sounds somewhat like restraint to Israel. And at the same time, officials have been clear that they are not telling Israel how to conduct its own military operations. They are not a part of that, but they are trying to emphasize the need for democracies like Israel and the United States to follow the rules of war and to be mindful of the humanitarian consequences, even when there is moral clarity, as the Secretary of State said about this conflict, that Hamas is responsible for terrorist attacks on the Israeli people, and Israel has a right to defend itself and to respond. Kristen?
Yeah, and Kelly, just following up on that idea, I mean, paint a picture of, because we've seen the Secretary of State in Israel this week, the Defense Secretary is there. We know that President Biden has had several conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Talk about this all-hands-on-deck approach that we are seeing.
Well, certainly they want Israel to feel the full weight and extent of U.S. partnership and that Israel would not be alone in this. At the same time, it is advice, counsel, guidance from a friend. Friend, as in the United States, is a friend to Israel, and also trying to demonstrate to others in the region, that is always implicit in these interactions, that they don't want to see other adversaries of Israel capitalize on the current unrest and vulnerability that exists and make this a larger, wider war. So by having principal officials like the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State going into the region, that sends that signal. Having the president talking about it each day does as well. And they want to try to be mindful of what civilized nations do. And at the same time, war in every way is a horrific set of circumstances.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, Courtney Cubitt, and of course, Josh Letterman beforehand. Thank you all so much. And as we mentioned, Israel is warning Gazans to evacuate, though many have nowhere to go and face deteriorating conditions as shelling continues. Here's a glimpse into the grim reality facing many civilians. 3 people living in Gaza shared their experiences with NBC News.
So as you can see, all Gaza citizens are just preparing themselves to leave, and no one has a place right now. We're just going. If you have a car, just run. No one knows where we're going, but we're all evacuating. All my neighbors have left the neighborhood. No one is left but us, and we're ready to run. Where? No one has any idea. We're going to the north of Gaza, which isn't near at all, which isn't safe at all. Just pray for us, and hopefully we'll come back home. We will come back home.
As I'm speaking, there is bombing everywhere around the hospital. The building is shaking every minute or 2 minutes. I don't know if we are going to see another day. And I hope my family is okay.
I've been witnessing the escalation of war and treating injuries as much as I can, seeing deaths in front of my eyes, seeing massacres, a whole family being wiped out from the history. Right from the day one, all the surgeons in Gaza have been called to the hospital to help because we were not enough. We couldn't handle this amount of injuries. And it's just heartbreaking. I actually joined the general surgery in order to just be away from the children and not seeing them suffering. And I ended up seeing them in these wards right in front of me, dying or injured or crying or being anonymous. I have multiple 2 young babies, one in 8 months and the other is 9 months. And they're just unknown. They're anonymous. They came out of the rubble and no one knows who are they or what family are they belonging to.
It is just unimaginable, and our thoughts are with all of them as they are suffering through this horror. And of course, what is happening in Israel and the Middle East is looming very large over the crisis on Capitol Hill. And we do have some breaking news in that regard, where Congressman Jim Jordan just won a closed-door vote with his Republican caucus, the speaker vote. Ali Vitale joins us from the Hill. Ali, what's the latest here?
Kristen, they do have a new speaker designee. In this case, it's Jim Jordan, who won, which we expected. What we didn't expect was that his margin would be so slim, coming out with only 124 votes, according to the members that we've spoken to as they've been leaving this meeting. The person who jumped into this race sort of spur of the moment, the congressman from Georgia, Austin Scott, got 81 votes. It's notable because the whip operation there had a very short amount of time and certainly was not nearly as organized and didn't have the lead time that Jordan had, having been whipping for his speakership over the course of the last week, really. Nevertheless, this presents yet another inflection point for this conference. Many people expected that Jordan would not just win, but win by a much larger margin. He seems to only have picked up about 24 votes from the time that they did this vote on Wednesday. And that vote, of course, was won by Steve Scalise. We know how that speaker bid turned out, however short-lived it was. But this is now a moment for Republicans to decide. And I think that they are doing another ballot right now. I think that it's about whether or not they should go to the floor and whether or not members would vote for Jordan if they put this on the floor. But that's sort of the next question. We always knew that they would clear the threshold of electing someone by a majority, simple majority behind closed doors. But it's a much different game when you actually go to the House floor and try to hit 217, which clearly Jordan, just like everyone else who's tried to get this job since McCarthy was ousted, is short of.
Well, and it's so fascinating to hear you talk about that very narrow margin that exists. Ali, could we in fact see a full vote? And talk a little bit about Jim Jordan, because as you say, Representative Scott from Georgia threw his hat into the ring, quite critical of Jordan, concerned that if Jordan were to be speaker, there could be deep budget cuts, particularly of the Pentagon at this very critical moment.
Yeah, deep budget cuts at the Pentagon and other pieces of the Jordan persona are also a concern, especially for those members who are concerned about the fact that he bucked subpoenas from the January 6th committee, from his proximity and consistent contact with former President Donald Trump. Jordan, of course, a longtime ally of the former president, concern over the role that he may have played on January 6th. All of those are key pieces of the Jordan resume, as much as members are also looking at his conservative bona fides as a selling point. This is something that for moderates makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get on board. Nevertheless, we haven't heard a lot of protests from them, at least not publicly, in terms of who they would be supporting, if not Jordan and if not Scott. I think the striking thing here, though, when you question whether or not Jordan should go to the floor, is there were questions about if Scalise made a tactical mistake by not going immediately from this closed-door meeting, rushing it to the floor. But that's also why some members said they didn't want to vote for him. They didn't like the speed with which he tried to parlay the momentum from behind closed doors onto the full House floor. A lot of opinions here, not a lot of shy wallflowers within this conference. And when you have just a cluster of them, between 4 and 5, who want to make noise, that's where you start running into problems. And so whether it's Scalise, whether it's McCarthy, whether it's Jordan, and frankly, whether it's someone else, they are all going to have these numbers problems. And it's an open question how they ultimately proceed here, because there is pressure for Jordan to try to take whatever momentum he has and put this on the floor and have people put their names to a vote. But there's also the desire to not continue embarrassing the party and making it look like a chaos conference, which, of course, it very much has been over the course of the last few weeks.
Ali Vitale, thank you for rushing to the camera for us for that breaking news. Come right back if you get anything more. We really appreciate it. And right after the break, we're going back to the Israeli-Gaza border live. Plus, I'll speak to the family member of someone who is believed to be being held hostage by Hamas. Do stay with us. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. As Israel prepares for a potential ground offensive in Gaza, we're seeing increased military activity along the border. And joining me from the Israel-Gaza border with the very latest is NBC's Ellison Barber. Ellison, thank you so much for joining us. Give us the very latest. Ellison, what are you seeing from where you are right now? Have you seen an uptick in military activity?
We have throughout the evening, Kristen, and we were a little while ago even closer towards the Israel-Gaza border, and we were told by Israeli forces that we had to move back because things were moving, things were starting to ramp up. There were helicopters flying overhead, and they told us that we needed to leave that area for our own safety and move a little bit back. But if you keep an eye on the skyline behind me, you will probably start to see the flashes of orange. It looks like lightning when it happens here and there, but it's not lightning. That is Gaza, and that is missiles, mortars, bombardment happening inside of Gaza. Right now, Israel's defense forces, they say that they have carried out some limited raids into Gaza, saying they were focused on trying to do some targeted strikes on Hamas militants and looking for some of those Israelis who have been taken hostage. They have not so far announced that they have started a full ground assault into Gaza, but we expect that that could happen at any minute. When I was speaking with an IDF spokesperson yesterday, I asked him if it was fair this time yesterday, or about 7 p.m. your time yesterday, if it was fair for us to characterize a ground assault into Gaza as imminent. And he said, we have been very clear on what our intent is. This will escalate. We plan to make sure that Hamas can no longer operate in any way, shape, or form, and they can no longer launch any sort of attack like the one Israel saw over the weekend. What that means for a lot of civilians in Gaza, Palestinians, is that their lives are under an increasingly dangerous situation. In the south, they have been told to, in the north rather, they have been told to evacuate to the south, but really there is not a lot of space options for people to get to safety. The border that leads out to Israeli territory on the north, that is closed, that has been closed. Israel says that's because Hamas militants struck it over the weekend and took people hostage there, as well as killed other people. The crossing into Egypt is not open, and Egyptian officials have said that part of that reason is because an Israeli airstrike damaged that border crossing. So people are essentially trapped. And as Israeli forces dropped leaflets over the north part of Gaza telling people to evacuate and giving them a 24-hour notice, Hamas was telling people to stay put. From our teams, our producer inside, people feel like they don't know what is the right choice and they have no good options. They have seen since Saturday just a constant escalation of Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, and because of the density and the way that Gaza just is, that means that a lot of civilians have been impacted. Israel has acknowledged hitting what we would traditionally consider civilian structures, mosques, homes. But when they do that, they say that's because Hamas is using those to carry out their operations, to store weapons. The reality is that civilians on both sides of this are being seriously impacted, and the death toll of civilians will likely rise significantly within Gaza. Kristen?
It is all just so unimaginable. Ellison, thank you for your tremendous reporting. Please stay safe. We really appreciate it. And President Biden today spoke with family members of 14 Americans still unaccounted for and who are believed to be being held hostage by Hamas. The president spoke about that call with the families publicly just moments ago. Take a look.
They're going through agony, not knowing what the status of their sons, daughters, husbands, wives, children are. You know, it's gut-wrenching. I assured them my personal commitment to do everything possible to return every missing American to their families. We're working round the clock to secure the release.
Now, among those who participated in the call were family members of Judith and Natalie Ra'anan, who live in Evanston, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. Judith and Natalie were visiting relatives last weekend when Hamas fighters captured the kibbutz where they were staying. They have not been seen since. I'm joined now by Sarai Cohen, Judith Ra'anan's sister and Natalie Ra'anan's aunt. She was not on the call today with President Biden, but her family members were. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off by just, Sarai, telling you how sorry we are. Our thoughts are with you and your family right now. How are you holding up amidst all of this?
Well, we're doing everything in our power just to doing everything we can to have a sign of life from them. We're devastated. We want to know that they're alive, and I have to say I watched the show until now while I was waiting to be on air, and I have a lot of sympathy to the civilians in the Gaza Strip. However, Hamas terrorists are exactly like ISIS, and I don't know if my niece Natalie is alive or not. I don't know if she's been raped or not. I don't know if they're alive or not. And I feel like our side should be told, you know. I thank you for the opportunity. We really just want a sign of life from them. We are working with the American authorities as per the Israeli authorities, but it's been 7 days now that we know nothing about them.
Well, we appreciate your sharing your story and your bravery in speaking out. Sarai, I know that you weren't on that call with the president, but do you have a sense of what his message was? What did he say to your family? And are you satisfied with the support that you're getting from the Biden administration right now?
Yes, actually, my brother was in the meeting, and I have to say that President Biden took the time to speak to each and every one of us, each and every family, which was very encouraging. He was very sympathetic about our situation and promised that he will do everything in his power to bring back Natalie and Judith, American citizens, back home. We're in touch with all the American authorities and Israeli authorities, and we're very much encouraged by their work. However, we still have no sign of life from them.
What are U.S. officials telling you, Sarai? What is their message? What has their message been to you?
Actually, from the Israeli authorities, we just heard a couple of hours ago, 3 hours ago, that Natalie and Judith are officially, it's known that they've been kidnapped and they're in the Gaza Strip. However, they have no idea, no knowledge if they're dead or alive, injured or well. But we know for sure that they've been kidnapped. And the American authorities are telling us that they're working on finding out where exactly they are in the Gaza Strip and what can be done in order to bring them back or know anything about their situation. But the Hamas, as per now, is not giving the American authorities nor the Israeli ones any list of the captured American citizens or about their situation.
What do you want people to know about your sister and your niece, Sarai?
I want them to know that they only came for a vacation. They want to be back home. I really hope they know that we're doing everything to get a sign of life from them. And I want them to feel that everyone, the American authorities and the Israeli, and especially us, their family, is just doing really everything in our power to reach out for them, get any sign whatsoever, dead or alive.
Does the fact that there seems to be this impending ground operation give you some hope that they will be found?
Yeah, it does. I really don't know. You know, I'm not a political person, and I do have sympathy for the civilians in the Gaza Strip. But I want to get them home. I want them alive. And if that's what it takes, I just feel that if they want, other hostages from Israel, just give it to them, free them. If we can prevent suffering from each one of the sides, I'm all in it. But I have one goal and one goal only: to get a signal of life and get Natalie and Judith back home.
Well, Sarai Cohen, we can't thank you enough. And again, our thoughts and our prayers are going to be with you and your family and all of the hostages at this incredibly difficult time. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much, Kristen, for having us on.
And coming up, amid the escalating war abroad, tensions and security concerns are on the rise here at home as Hamas calls for a global day of anger in support of the terrorist attacks in Israel. We will delve into all of that. You are watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Amid tensions in the Middle East, Jewish communities around the world are on high alert today after a former Hamas leader called for a global day of anger in support of last weekend's brutal attack. France's prime minister raised the terrorist alert level after a teacher was stabbed and killed and 2 other people were seriously injured at a school in northern France. French officials say that attack was without a doubt connected to the violence in the Middle East. And here in the U.S., 3 law enforcement officials tell NBC News there's been online chatter about attacks, but none of the online threats are specific and credible. Still, law enforcement agencies across the country are stepping up patrols of synagogues, Jewish businesses, and other potential targets. Here in Washington, crews put up barriers around the Capitol. And in New York, the NYPD has ordered all officers to report in uniform today as a show of force against any potential threat. Despite the extra police presence, many Jewish schools here in the U.S. and elsewhere around the world were closed as a precaution. Joining me now is Martin Fletcher, former Tel Aviv bureau chief for NBC News. Martin, thank you so much for joining us. We do hope that you are staying safe. I want to read you something that Ben Rhodes, former deputy national security advisor, posted on X just a short time ago. He wrote, "The decisions being made now are going to impact millions of lives, reverberate for generations, and risk all kinds of escalation. The U.S. should have learned from 9/11 the profound cost of being guided by anger and fear. I hope that is what we are telling the Israeli government." What do you make of that, Martin?
Anger and fear pretty much sums up the prevailing emotions in Israel today, for sure. And so, yeah, the United States responded in the way they did, and they ended up in the war that they did. Israel, in the short term, is heading in exactly the same direction. There is so much fear and anger in Israel today. There is such a sense of vulnerability, of surprise and shock that the vaunted Israeli army and intelligence completely failed. There were, as we know from the reporting of the last few days, there were families that were under attack, communities under attack for hours, in some places to the south, 7-8 hours before anybody with a gun came to help the civilians who were being massacred by the Palestinians of Hamas. So Israel now is a nation in shock, united in this demand, go into Gaza, finish Hamas once and for all. The reality is something that is a bit different, I think, because, I mean, we've seen Israel's mini wars with Hamas over the years. I believe there's been 5 or 6 mini wars in the last 15 years. They didn't achieve much apart from delay things to slow Hamas down by a couple of years. Now Israel wants to change that. They want to destroy Hamas. The question then becomes what takes the place. And then, of course, it becomes a big mess, as America found out in Iraq and Afghanistan. You just get bogged down. Israel was bogged down in Gaza for many years, for decades. They finally abandoned the place in 2006, and now we're back to where we were in those days, only the situation is much worse today.
Yeah, I think you asked the critical question, what happens after all of this fighting? I should correct myself. Of course, you are now in New York. But of course, no one knows this region better than you do, Martin. As Israel prepares to go into Gaza, we're reporting on this potential ground invasion. What are the potential implications? We've been seeing these images from Gaza. The fact that they're getting mixed messages. Should they evacuate? Should they stay? What are your biggest concerns as you watch this unfold?
Well, as everybody's saying, they've got nowhere to go. It's not like this. Israel's trying to get on the right side of history by warning them, by as they do. By the way, when Israel bombs homes in the past, anyway, they had something called what they call the door knocking procedure. They would actually telephone the families in the house and say, "We're going to bomb you." So that's what to give the civilians time to get away in order to reduce civilian casualties. Israel doesn't want to kill civilians, but that's the situation today in Gaza. So when Israel says, get out of town, get out of Dodge, 1 million people go south, where are they going to go? I mean, they're going to land, where? I mean, literally, will they be on the beach? Will they be in the fields? It's not like there are any hotels or you know, so there's nowhere to go. So Israel's just trying to say the right thing before they do what they consider is the right thing. And the problem is that right now Israel has the moral high ground. A lot of sympathy for the world for the disgusting atrocities that these Hamas terrorists committed on these innocent civilians. Everybody with their right mind is supporting Israel and saying, yes, you've got a right to defend yourself. But what's going to happen in a week when the pictures come out of this smashing of Gaza, the hotels overflowing with victims? You know, the moral high ground now is a slippery slope. And in about a week or 10 days, it could look a bit different, and support for Israel may start to diminish. That's what I would imagine would happen. The other problem, of course, is that when Israel says we're going to go in and we're hoping to find the hostages, that is a very slim hope. There was one hostage, as you know, Gilad Shalit, who was held by Hamas in Gaza for 5 years, and Israel never found him. In the end, they got him back by swapping him for 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. So if they couldn't find one prisoner, one hostage in 5 years, they haven't got much hope of finding 150 in a couple of days. So it looks grim for the hostages, I'm afraid to say. Hopefully there'll be negotiations of some kind that will get them out, but it's a slim hope.
That is a grim perspective indeed, Martin. And I just wonder, we've been talking about throughout the week the possibility that this could become a wider war, potentially with Lebanon and Syria. How much of a risk is there for that at this point?
There's a huge risk, but I don't think, I would imagine from what I understand of the region, that it's not the plan of Hezbollah to go to war with Israel today. Hezbollah does basically what Iran tells it to do. Hamas not so much by a long way, but Hezbollah is basically Iran's proxy army in the region. Armed to the teeth, 150,000 rockets, some of them long range and very accurate, facing Israel. But what they're there in order to go to war with Israel if and when Iran goes to war with Israel. So does Iran really want to blow the Hezbollah card in order to help Hamas? I doubt it.
All right. Martin Fletcher, as always, thank you so much for joining us. We will be in touch with you in the coming days. We really appreciate it. And still to come, deep divides. We are live on the campaign trail in New Hampshire as the war in Israel puts foreign policy center stage in the 2024 race for president. The panel's next. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. As former President Trump lambasts President Biden's handling of the situation in the Middle East, his former ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, is praising Biden's response, posting online, quote, "While I have been and remain deeply critical of the Biden administration, the moral, tactical, diplomatic, and military support that it has provided Israel over the past few days has been exceptional. As one living in Jerusalem with children who are Israeli citizens, I am deeply grateful. I pray that American support continues in the difficult days ahead." Meanwhile, Mr. Trump has come under fire from his own party for praising Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah and criticizing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Joining me now is NBC's Dasha Burns from Nashua, New Hampshire. And Dasha, you've obviously been covering the reaction and the fallout to Trump's really controversial comments, saying that Hezbollah is, quote, very smart, and criticizing Benjamin Netanyahu. And this is really the first time that we're starting to see the gloves come off for some of these candidates. What are the big headlines here?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Kristen. And we actually had a chance to speak to some of these candidates directly as they have been here in New Hampshire filing for candidacy to get on the ballot in the first in the nation primary state. Take a listen to what a couple of them told us.
Now is not the time to be attacking our ally. Prime Minister Netanyahu is somebody that I've become friends with. He is managing one of the most difficult situations Israel's ever had to face. You may have a personal vendetta or beef with him, but is that really the time to be out there doing that and to be attacking the Israeli defense minister? I don't think so.
This is a dangerous world. I don't want to hear from him how great Hezbollah is. I don't want to see him congratulate the Communist Party anymore. I don't want him hitting Netanyahu. He's going through regardless of what you think about Netanyahu. This is not about Netanyahu. This is about the people of Israel.
Also, Kristen, Mike Pence earlier today, notable because he was the Trump's former vice president and his former running mate, calling Trump's words, quote, reckless and irresponsible, Kristen.
Well, Dasha, it's so interesting because you listen to Nikki Haley there. She's really been gaining traction. Of course, she's the former UN ambassador, and she is leaning into, not just in this moment, but we've seen her in the first and second GOP primary debates, lean into her expertise when it comes to foreign policy. Talk a little bit about that as a part of her strategy. Based on my conversations with voters on the trail, I mean, she's gaining traction. We're not just seeing it in the polls.
Yeah, you could really see today when she was giving her speech after filing for candidacy here that she is really in her element and she is feeling very strong right now. She talks about these issues with ease, with comfort, and with real clarity. She feels like she knows what she's talking about here because she has experience. She talks about her experience with the UN, dealing with Israelis, Palestinians, dealing with Iran. She talks about her husband, who is deployed on active duty right now, and she talks about having visited these areas where this is all going down right now. So you can tell that she feels like this is a moment she can really capitalize on, Kristen.
Dasha Burns covering all the angles, as always. Thank you. Turning now to our panel, Wall Street Journal senior political correspondent Molly Ball, Democratic strategist and CEO of consulting firm SKDK Doug Thornell, and Sarah Chamberlain, president and CEO of Main Street Partnership. Thanks to all of you for being here at the end of what has been a very difficult week for everyone. So thank you. Molly, let me start with you. And let's just talk about President Biden's response, because this is an area where he is quite comfortable foreign policy. This was also one of his key campaign promises, really restoring America's strength and stability on the world stage. What do you make of his response so far?
Well, it is very interesting to see it, praised by all of these Republican candidates, right? I think it hasn't been true for a long time in American politics, the old idea that politics stops at the water's edge. But American support for Israel is probably the closest thing you will still get to a unifying issue between the parties. And the exception to that, of course, is Donald Trump, who has always bet that no matter what the position is, his voters always hate the Democrats more than they hate our enemies abroad or love our allies. And so that is what he's betting on here. And he's taken this very exotic position that you see him being pretty much universally condemned for.
Sarah, it's so interesting because how many times have we had this conversation? Donald Trump has said something that a lot of people find to be completely outrageous. It doesn't seem like it's going to impact him in the primary with his core supporters. But is there a potential impact if he were to win the nomination? And the fact that it highlights this stark divide in the Republican Party, this isolationist wing that is really led by Trump.
So Trump, you're right, it's probably not going to hurt him in the primary, but in the general, it's a deadly. I mean, there's a lot of Jewish people that have voted for Republican and actually have voted for him that are unhappy. His own family is Jewish. So it's shocking to me that he would do this. I think he made this very personal and doesn't care for the prime minister because he came out and called Biden the president-elect. So I think it's personal, and I think that people in the general are going to start to move away from Trump even more.
Doug, Sarah's saying it's deadly in the general election. What do you make, though, of the response that we've seen from his GOP rivals? I mean, this is arguably some of the strongest condemnation that we've seen from a Nikki Haley, from a Ron DeSantis, from a Tim Scott, for that matter.
Yeah, and it's, if you're going to run for president in a primary, you have to prosecute a case against the front runner, and they have all been unwilling to do that. It looks like they're trying to get in a little guts here in terms of calling him out, but the reality is I think they're still trying to figure out how to do that. And foreign policy and national security within the Republican Party these days is not what it was 12, 14 years ago. And, one of the things I will say about this week and about Biden's speech is that it was one of his best moments, I think. Forceful, strong. I think if you read a lot of the Israeli publications, there was a lot of praise for that speech. A lot of people watched it. it was that leadership moment that right now Donald Trump and I don't think any of the other Republican candidates for president have been able to meet. And so it was a really important moment for the president. I think it was an important moment for this country. It was an important moment for Israel.
Yeah, one of the messages we heard from the president was to Congress, Molly, which is asking them for, quote unquote, urgent action on the issue of giving aid to Israel. We know that that's going to be up for discussion once they have elected a Speaker of the House, but apparently we're now just learning that they are going to break for the weekend. Jim Jordan won the votes in his conference, but by a very narrow margin. I mean, do you think he'll get the speakership? How does this end?
Nobody knows how it ends, including Jim Jordan, including the entire House Republican Conference. But yes, just as we were beginning this panel, they were being released for the weekend to try to go home and cool off. So we were about to head into week 3 without a Speaker of the House at a time when, you know, unfortunately for everyone involved, you do need a functioning House of Representatives in order to meet all these very urgent needs, to provide the aid that the administration is asking for to Israel, to provide the next tranche of aid to Ukraine, and in only about a month to keep the government funded. So while the House is busy just completely falling apart in a giant flaming ball of chaos, there needs to be a speaker so that they can do all these things.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, I was asking Matt Gaetz last weekend why he did this without a plan. And I wonder if the timing of this has even caught him off guard, that it's lasting this long and now this urgency, given this crisis in Israel that no one could have foreseen when this initially unraveled.
So the Republican Main Street Partnership has 90 members, and they're tired. And they no longer care if Matt Gaetz, what Matt Gaetz thought when he did this. They are tired. They want to get this resolved. I'm actually thrilled that they're going home, having spent a lot of time with them last night. And I think maybe if they get to go home, sleep, relax, spend some time with their family, that maybe when they come back next year, next week, we can get this resolved. But you're right, the vote was not close.
Let me just ask you, though. I mean, I've been talking to Republican sources. They're worried this is going to cost them control of the House. I mean, is that what you're hearing?
Very concerned. And the 17 of the 18 members that live in Biden districts are members of the Republican Main Street Partnership. We do not have Santos, but they're very concerned. I mean, you see chaos down here. And most people don't understand there is no bills you can bring to the floor. They can't do anything. So President Biden called for that. But the reality is nothing will be done in the House until we have a speaker.
Doug, realistically, do Democrats jump in to save this situation or no?
I don't think that's – I think it's the job of the Republicans to pick the speaker. They are the party in charge of the House.
So there's no scenario, you think, where Democrats say this has just gotten beyond the point of no return. We've got to jump in here and help just bring stability.
Well, the next vote will be for Speaker, so I would be surprised if you have House Democrats not supporting Hakeem Jeffries. He's got universal support, right? So it's really the job of whoever that nominee is to gather all that support. And to Sarah's point about the challenge of Republicans face in the House, they're losing their best fundraiser in Kevin McCarthy. You know, if they go with Jim Jordan, is that going to be someone who can go into these 18 districts that Republicans represent that Joe Biden won? I mean, is he really going to be able to campaign in some of those places, given his positions on a lot of issues? So, yeah, it creates, putting aside all the terrible optics that exist, there are some structural and process things that are going to happen here with a new speaker that are going to be really costly for Republicans.
Sarah, what about that?
It will be costly, but at what point do the Democrats say, okay, there's 3 or 4 of them willing to walk off the floor to make a new speaker for the Republican Party? I mean, I think some of them have buyer's remorse for not doing it a couple of weeks ago to save Kevin, because really what this comes down to is it is the Biden's administration, and Joe Biden has to run for president.
Molly, very quickly, what is your reporting around how much concern there is inside the Republican Party about this potentially costing them the majority?
There's quite a lot of concern, and I've been on the Hill all week reporting on this chaos that's unfolding. Today, I believe it was Steve Womack from Arkansas said, you know, the American people gave us the reins to the House, and I would not be surprised if they look at this and decide to take it back.
Wow. Okay. Well, we are still covering this Congress in a state of paralysis. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Molly, Doug, and Sarah, and thank you for being with us this hour. NBC News will have live special coverage of the Israel-Hamas war this weekend from 8 to 10 p.m., both tomorrow night and Sunday night. And if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press on your local station. The news continues with Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.